Khando Sang Sangi jadan zagi janam na janjo pato dani gazuji dagi ninzagi pesanangi doda benji sangi do baru Nagien yugi no jansam Pema geza dangbola yanzan jaging job nye pema june jesu da gordo gando mambe ko gege jesu da togi tengi da jesu sa guru padma zedi Zhen dong zhe de wa dong de wei ge dong de fa ge ji dong ge dong gi ge dong de wa ge ji dong ge me be de wa dong pa dong mi de wa ge ji nie ling zhe dong ni dong de wei dong nyam de me pa dong de pa ge ji shen zhen dong zhe de wa dong de wei ge dong de pa ge ji dong ge gi ge dong de wa ge ji dong ge me be de wa dong pa dong mi de wa ge ji nie ling zhe dong ni dong de wei dong nyam de me pa dong de pa ge ji shen zhen dong zhe de wa dong de wei ge dong de pa ge ji dong ge gi ge dong de wa ge ji dong ge me be de wa dong pa dong mi de wa ge ji nie ling zhe dong ni dong de wei dong nyam de me pa dong de pa ge ji Om Zubawa Shuddha Sarva Dharma Subhawa Shuddho Ham.
Hello. Um, I come here to to answer to the question of my sister in the Sangha, Sophia Dalle. We don't know each other in physical life, but through internet a little bit. We are both artists, and so we had some exchanges because we are also both linked to the path of the Dakinis. So maybe I should present myself. I chose now to, for the first time, present myself under the name that I received when I fulfilled training about the five wisdom. The name is Khando Sang Nying. I translated it into Tibetan. It means the Dakini of the secret heart. So this was interesting because I found this name again, which I never did share with people. In my pictures, I have a picture because it was done with a very nice calligraphic by the people from Shambhala, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And I translated it into Tibetan. For this first communication where I want to kind of do my best to share something that I already resumed in a romance, which is being translated into English right now. So hopefully I will post it for you. I plan to put it in some kind of a blog and to also share it for free in English. It is called The Bees Island because the main character of the book is a woman called Aryabi who reached enlightenment in the same time that the whole world was kind of falling apart. And she is a person that is dedicated since a young age to practice and to dance. And somehow she experienced the union of masculine and feminine not only through her inner research, which was quite simple. It is based actually in the fact that she felt what it was to be a man in her physical sensation by building the sensation, exactly like we do when we practice Yidam or all the practices we do, that we can change form and we can experience through these forms our own qualities and how our own qualities can be canalized. Excuse me, my English is sometimes missing. And so when she at one point concentrates very much on feeling as if she is a man, but not in the sense of outer world, more in the sense of sensation of the body, actually it was not so easy for her. And so she went on with that without too much pushing, just like programming her mind to build that sensation of a penis and with not any breast in the sense of the feminine breast. And actually her motivation was because she was not really getting it. She felt that since she was a young child, she saw many problems about sex and about people being woman or being man or being whatever they think they are. And that she wanted to understand her own issues about relationships with man in her case, because this is what she was meant to relate with. And she was like acknowledging that none of the concepts were working at all, because it was not applicable to reality. The reality is very on the spot and spontaneous, just like animals and children and plants. It's just the way it is. Human beings sometimes, what she felt is that she didn't rely that much anymore on concepts, that she really needed to go through an experience that is direct. And also it was what I call the fully, I don't know how to say that in English, the spontaneous, not mindful first thought. Because at one point sometimes, it's a joke in French, because in French they say pleine conscience and I say pleine inconscience, so which would be like full awareness. In this case it's full unawareness. Because a little bit like children, sometimes we have an intuition that is very accurate. And if that is not an impulse, if this is not ego-driven, so in that case, or impulse or first thought, spontaneous is very much the good one, the best one. First thought, best thought. So at one point she is walking in a supermarket, this lady of my book, and she suddenly finds herself being a man physically, like having a penis, and the pants were a little bit too stiff, too stretched on her pelvis, and it was not very comfortable. And all the sensations that came, well, not for a long time, it was maybe less than 1 minute, but that shifted the whole story of her life. And actually, of course, this is a romance, and in my book she lives many things that I just kind of imagined, because she is devoted to Yeshe Tsogyal. But it's true that the roots of this story has to do with something that I really did experience. And the book is like some kind of a resume of this peculiar topic of my experience, which is the Yab and the Yum. I started to understand the Yab and the Yum by dancing, because it was really, like, since you're a child, you hear all the time about yin and yang. I mean, at least that was my case. Not since a child, because in my childhood nobody said yin and yang, but a little bit like later. I left my home when I was 14 years old, so And I was very much quickly involved in spiritual path after living in the streets and things like that. And then I made an advertisement that was very famous in France, which is called the teasing advertisement. It was a girl who ends up naked in the poster. It was called J'enlève le haut, I take away the top. It was very, very famous in the 80s. And that was me at that time, called Myriam. And so immediately the whole thing about my life, my dance, did bring me to realize that I had a feminine body, and then to realize that the man body was different, and then to realize things about relationships, which I was looking forward to fully embrace as something deeper than the social whatever that is the fashion way of thinking, you know, the way that we have a tendency now to try to fit into the way people think, and not so often do we just assume our own truth of how we are thinking and how this can be shaped in a way that does free ourselves from suffering and help others free from suffering. So when she felt that man energy, and she understood also that in the dance she was always meeting these two qualities of the yin and the yang in very simple things like the right hand and the left hand, or going forwards, going backwards, or how when you are whirling on your own body, actually if you walk in a circle and then you close the circle as you walk in a spiral, at the end you will end up turning on yourself like children do. Now actually you are walking backwards and forwards in the same time, so you're not really going anywhere except in the vortex. And in that vortex actually going left and going right are also inverted. So at one point when you're whirling, you're not moving anymore somehow. That's the sensation. The sensation is that everything is just whirling around you, and that you are quite still. So it's a movement of stillness, a little bit like Vajrayogini when we say that she dances so quick that you don't see her move anymore. And so when Aryabi, this lady, she understands this, it's changed her life, because she gets in peace with mankind as the masculine and womankind as the feminine. And she really realizes how much she has the whole thing as part of who she is, and that it is not fixed in the sense that things depend on the awareness, the perception. And that is very true when you cut through concepts and you go straight into the basic facts of how your being is in a kind of energy that has to do with this shaping of how your vision is. Of course, at one point there's no need even of creating any kind of a vision, but in the beginning we do need to work on that, because otherwise we lose our true motivation. We get entangled into the 8 mundane dharma. So all my talk here is really based on the Vajrayana practice, because I want to talk about Anneke Lucas and why do I feel, this is my own perception, that Anneke Lucas is manifesting an energy that is in the same frame as Yeshe Tsogyal. And so now I come to Yeshe Tsogyal. Yeshe Tsogyal was a queen, supposedly, doesn't matter anyway, the facts of the 8th century, she did exist. It's just that what we know about her is many different biographic. Now in the practice, the most important thing is to merge ourselves with the object of the devotion, and in this case, if we spontaneously feel devotion towards Yeshe Tsogyal, for example, which is my case. What is the most important is to let ourselves be that energy, that way of dealing with the duality between relative world and absolute world. In the absolute, as I was just saying, there is not any conflict, there's absolutely no problem. It's exactly like being in the center of this vortex when you are whirling. You do not have to struggle with whatever that is. And that is the core of reality, in the sense that that is the source of all the complicated and very rich manifestations of what we call material physical manifestations. And so Yeshe Tsogyal, I have felt my whole life that I am attracted to her, and I have been, when I was much younger, afraid of how powerful she is. Specifically in this biographic, where in that case for me what impressed me the most was not so much that she was raped and that she did transform her aggressors. In that moment, this was absolutely not something that was important in my mind. I was around 18, 19, 20. And then I will tell you more about what happened to me, so that maybe you can receive my testimony under the acknowledgement of where I come from somehow, in the sense of abuse. And at that moment, Yeshe Tsogyal impressed me much more because of her practice, because she asks Guru Rinpoche one moment, as I told you, she was supposedly a queen, and Padmasambhava asked to the king if he could have her with him, because in order to help Tibet and in order to establish Buddha Dharma for a long time in the highest mountain of the world, which did happen. It was there for a long time, really established and practiced and experienced by thousands of millions of very devoted people that had no distractions at all, and they deserve most of our respect for having cultivated this treasure for all of us, and that we can have it for free now. And so she was offered somehow as a young woman. She might have been around 13, 14. In that case, in many cultures at 13, 14, when you have your period and that you can get pregnant, it means that you are a woman, as well as a man is the same thing, as long when he starts to be able to make children, he is a man, simply because things are simple in that case. And so she immediately devotes herself to Padmasambhava Guru Rinpoche, but she has a story of abuse before and then after. So all her life has very much been in the encounter with the difficult aggression her body had to cope with man. And somehow, when she enters her practice in a very fully devoted and enthusiastic way, she has a dream, and in that dream the Dakinis asks her to do practices of hardship that are quite violent. And she goes to Guru Padmasambhava, which is in the same time her consort, which means that they do have sexual relationships in the frame of practice of the Dharma. And the relationship in this case of both of them is very poetical. They express themselves by poetry. They express themselves one to the other and the other to one by singing and by praying and by making love. And also, of course, by symbol. Excuse me. And so her dreams ask her this, and then when she asks Guru Padmasambhava, please tell me, what should I do? He says, well, you don't need to get into such extreme this is funny because actually she will do a very extreme things, but you don't have to get into such extreme practices. Just go along and do the practice of the body, the speech, and the mind. So the practice of the body is prostrations, and then she does so much prostration that she gets ill, and then she gets like almost dying, and when suddenly she has a deep experience in sickness, she recovers and gains a siddhi of the body. And then with the speech, she says mantra non-stop, so much non-stop that she gets ill, her throat gets swollen and all kinds of problems in her throat, in her speech. And then at the point that she's almost like dying, she has a deep experience and recovers, realizing the power of speech. And then her mind practice is a meditation practice. And in that meditation practice, she has to remain completely in the meditation without ever getting distracted by whatever that would be. And at one point she has hallucinations of beautiful man wanting to please her, or fearful visions, or different things that could distract her. But just as Lord Buddha under the tree, she just does not get out of her practice. And at one point in the text, there are insects coming all over her, and the insects, and this is very important in relationship also with Anneke Lucas. I will come back to that, and the intuition I had about her related to Yeshe Tsogyal. And when the insects cover her body and enter by her holes of her body, in the text it says that she had a little goops, but she did not move. And so in this case her meditation becomes so deep, and then the people of that place where she is practicing in the mountain, they get upset because they think this woman is a witch and that she is bringing all kinds of bad weathers. And that's because the divinities of that place were trying to challenge her magical power, but she would not move. And so they just ended up getting quiet. But the village, people of the village, they did not know, so she thought she's just a bad witch, because it's very important also to understand in this story I'm telling that all the Tibetan world, but not only the Tibetan world, the whole world was involved with black magic and still is. It's just that now we suddenly discovered it is, but it has never stopped. And no, excuse me, it's my dog. It's a moment. Okay, so my dog just stole, she stole the box of my glasses, but hopefully the glasses were not in there, so she won't eat the glasses too. Only the box is done, probably. Okay, so when she is found by Yeshe Tsogyal, by the villagers, and they want to kill her, and she doesn't move, but they're not able to kill her because no weapon would pierce her body. She realized the Vajra body. Okay, so we can just stop at that place now about the story and realize that all of this is in the same time true, because a human being can realize all of these experiences. And in the same times, they're deeply symbolic. What is the Vajra body? What is the power of woman? Why was I so overwhelmed in that moment when, as a young woman? I got so impressed that I got depressed for about 1 year because I thought I'm never going to be able to be like her, because she became my role model. To tell you the truth, I had no idea that I was at that time a woman or a man. I just realized maybe when I became a model this thing about woman and man. But before, I didn't really have this idea of being a woman or being a man. And I didn't have an idea of role models or things like that, you know. It's just that immediately I was completely fully devoted to Yeshe Tsogyal, and her life, her story, her poetry, her attitude, her love, because she is a lady, she's the queen of bliss, the queen of bliss, Dechen, the great bliss. The great bliss is not pleasure, it's not seduction, it's not that. All of this is just something modern that the Westerners invented. It's not about this. The beauty is totally inherent to the nature of mind. And she is a woman that is brave, powerful, and absolutely able to absorb aggression. And that is the topic about Yeshe Tsogyal. She can absorb all of it, and she never gives up. She never stops being fully in love, fully ecstatic about loving. And it's not loving somebody, it's not loving something, it's how she is. And that for me was so much the truth, because when I dance, that's what I feel. When I dance, I don't feel anything else than love. Even if I'm dancing whatever kind of energy, I can dance dramatic things, or I can dance different emotions, but actually all of it is love, always, and that was always the case. But it's just the problem was that when I was getting into real life and real people, it was not the case. And actually, besides a little bit, you know, as a child, I liked very much Jesus Christ, and I thought Jesus Christ was great, and he wanted me to, you know, to love, unconditional love, and things like that. And I was wanting to be like that because I felt like that. But actually, that was not what happened. You know, what happened would be like, I don't know, maybe my mother was being beaten all the time by her husband, or maybe I was having friends and then they got angry at me, or maybe people hated me because I was so spontaneous and so nice looking and always good at everything, so the children would hate me, or maybe I was not discreet enough, things like that, you know. And so I was in that quest for love, which is the name of the book of Anneke Lucas. I was in that quest for love, and I was not finding love from outside, and I had found it from inside somehow, thanks to dance. But it was not really easy to have these two together, like the relative and the absolute. It was really not easy at all. And Jesus Christ was not telling me how to do that, you know. So actually, Yeshe Tsogyal, yes, she's telling me how to do that. And this is, you know, each one of us, we have the things that touches us. It's like music or food. It doesn't matter when you practice the Dharma. Whatever is the thing that touches you is the good one. And so she does not have her body pierced by any weapon at all, the Vajra body. So this is very interesting, isn't it? Which means that Yeshe Tsogyal, if you look at her whole life, everything she did, she's very powerful. She's very powerful in magic. She does magic contest against the Tirtikas, which are the people that don't believe in the Buddhist shunyata, emptiness. They believe in gods or in materialistic powers. And she fights magically against them, and she wins all the time. And then when she goes in retreat, in the midst of all these practices I'm talking about, I'm not going to tell the whole story because the whole story would be too long for now. But when she gets into all these different practices, at one point she comes to a moment that Guru Rinpoche tells her to have a concert, which was another guy, and a young guy that she has to go alone to buy because he's a slave in Nepal. So she has to go and bring him back with Achara Saleh is his name. And she actually lives with him in practicing in caves, and they have different things to do. And it's very funny because even in the texts, in the Tibetan texts, they say, Yeshe Tsogyal could do it, but he couldn't bear it anymore. He left. So several times there is this situation that he's not able to follow her because she is so strong in her, how could I say that? This love and this quality of absorption leaded her to be diamond-like in union with this core emptiness, love and emptiness, bliss and emptiness, if you like. And so nothing can hurt her in the sense of becoming ill, because the hurt is an illness. The hurt is samsaric illness. It's contagious. And why am I talking about all this before I expose to you why I think Anneke is somebody very, very useful nowadays for women that are suffering from abuse and maybe more suffering of their own reaction to abuse, is because she went through it and she came out of that tunnel with the light. And her experience has also been, in her case, Anneke Lucas. It has been, in her case, to be literally caught in black magic networks since a very young age and tortured and almost killed, and also forced herself to kill animals and to kill people so that she could be brainwashed in the sense of mind control of her power, because she was already as a child very, this is my interpretation, she was very much what she is now already in the core of herself, a very strong power of her spirit. And she had a near-death experience at the moment that they were about to kill her. I don't tell you all the details because it's quite horrific. It's very, very deep to read her book. And I also maybe can talk about this too. But what happened at one point that I want to point out is that they also closed her as a child. She was maybe, I don't remember the age, maybe 9 years old or 10, in a dark place like a box with insects all over her. And then in the book she tells how she reacts to the insects. And actually what she says is that, and this is very important, is that she was taught that the power comes from relaxing. In this case, these people want her to have black magic power. They want to use her to control important politicians or people, and that she would become a tool not only of information but also of control over these people that would be in love with her or fascinated by her, seduced fully by her. Like a possession, you know, like how a woman can possess a man. That would be her role. And this power inside of her was a power of freedom, rebellion. She wouldn't really do it, but she was so powerful because of that. So they tried to make her do it. And they taught her things. And this is where this is very powerful, because she is able to explain how the torture and everything they did to her brought her to develop siddhis, what we call siddhis. And actually it is incredible because it is very much like what we do in Vajrayana. And then if you look into what is the life of Milarepa, for example, or all the hardships even of the Buddha himself, because the Buddha, before he stops creating hardships for himself, he does go through hardships. He does do yogas. He does walk. He does lots of physical things, the Buddha, if you analyze what his life was. It was very comfortable until he left the palace, and then it was not anymore comfortable. It is very difficult. And all these hardship and suffering and difficult things brought him to discover enlightenment, which is freedom from all causes and results of karma and suffering. Very simple. Yeshe Tsogyal is the same thing. And Anneke says that she learns to relax. And more she relaxes, the more she can, as many people nowadays say, because people are ignorant of these the depth. So they have interpretations about psychological things, about how bad these people are to these innocent and all this stuff. These things are a little bit rubbish, excuse me to say what I think, but it is rubbish because the depth of life is not like that. All that we encounter is part of our initiation, is part of the mandala that we have kind of set up by ourselves, by karma. It sticks to us. It's like it sticks to us as long as karma is there. So it will happen to us, these things, either because of our karma, either because we dedicate to help people. Depends, no? But it happened, and it happened to Jesus Christ, and it happened to lots of people, everybody. They just maybe don't complain that much, but if you look into their lives, you see it happen to them too. And the complaining thing is a very, very difficult thing, because the complaining thing, it takes your power away, and maybe you need at one point to complain a little bit, but then if you're complaining your whole life and putting the guilt on people, it doesn't get you out of suffering. It doesn't get you out of the causes of suffering, neither of the result, and it takes your power away. And so when she explained to Anneke Lucas that she was taught to relax, actually at the point that they're killing her and doing a lot of tortures to her and she's a child, she relaxes. And then she suddenly realizes, that's in her book, that the guy who's torturing her relaxes, and he told the other children that are doing bad things to her to relax. And that is exactly what we are supposed to do when we practice. So it is very important to understand that what we call black magic is exactly the same thing as what we call white magic. And magic depends on how we canalize the energies towards helping people to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, and to be free also from the results of suffering. How do they deal with that? And how we ourselves realize that. But originally the Buddha did not use magic in the first wheel of the Dharma. He used the most simple thing because he didn't really want to teach, the Buddha. What he wanted to do was to simply be enlightened and not tell anybody. But he had to tell people because people wanted him to help them. And so he ended up doing it. But when he said, nobody's going to understand this, it's no use. So he went with the first thing, just don't harm, just control your mind, and just make your life simple. So this is what we call the Theravada or Hinayana. Hinayana means that in this case, the path is narrow. What we mean by narrow, it's not that they are little and they're not honorable. It means, in this case, Hinayana would mean that the path is narrow because you don't do a lot of things that are dangerous, like you won't drink wine, or you won't make love, or you won't have a family, and you won't have a work, or at least not a work that could be any kind of harm, all these things. You will be discreet, you won't show your seduction, all these things, no? Why? Because it's a narrow path in the sense that you adopt a position, and that can be very useful in times of our lives anyway, all of us, to a position of austerity. But not austerity in the excessive sense, but austerity in the very moderate sense of middle path, not too much, not too less. The Mahayana is that at one point, one person that does that ends up relating with people anyway, because you're not going to be alone all the time in your, cave, or walking. In the case of the Buddha, he's walking, so he does meet people all the time, and he begs, So you meet people, and at one point, he had to teach also to people who are kings, who are queens, who are poor, who have a family, and they are not going to become a monk. They're not going to do that monk or nun kind of lifestyle. And so the Mahayana comes out of this wider path, which is to use the difficult relationship that we have in social life as a path. So it doesn't mean, I'm sorry, I'm not very politically correct, never, I think. I don't know why, that's the way I am. But I don't really believe that the Mahayana path is to go around and tell people what is right, what is wrong, or to be against Trump, or to be for Trump, or whatever that is. I don't think that's what it is. So I don't agree, so I make it clear, as my first communication as Khando Sang Nying. I don't believe in Buddhist intervention in society. I don't think it's a good idea. I think politics are one of the 8 mundane dharma. But of course, there is influence. We do influence, of course. We all do. My dog influences me now. She's just next to me. And I influence her. But the influence is very good. It's like a flower has a perfume, no? The flower is not trying to put perfume on you, but actually you can enjoy the perfume of the flower. So this is how the Buddha shows the flower to Mahakassapa. And Mahakassapa is the only one who understands the flower without any words, without any concept. This is how Buddha is influent in politics, because he was influent in politics also in his time. But he never, ever took part of it. I think that is a very dangerous road to go. And I think it's a very dangerous road to go in the sense of trying to create sanghas that would be kind of democratic and all this kind of stuff, which will lead us down in no more dharma at all at one point. We're not supposed to judge people. We're supposed to help them, and help them by being ourselves. So that is the wide path, is to relate with all kinds of things in the world, and out of compassion to join the bodhicitta, which is the bodhicitta of the full knowledge about emptiness, which is the nature of mind, that happens in the same time as samsara happens, which is the deployment of energies in the form of emotions. So when I'm coming back to this black and white magic, it's because people do magic all the time. People are always doing magic. When you tell a little story to your child, this is a magical thing to do, because the child will relax and sleep, for example, because it's always about relaxing, isn't it? So at one point, the Vajrayana, which comes later, because as the Buddha is teaching, his students are evolving, and his experience also is deepening. His experience not of being enlightened, but more of being in touch with people, which is the difficult part. It's like when I dance, the difficult part is not to dance, is to relate with people as I dance, no? Because it's difficult not to be ego-centered. This is the thing when you dance, no? If you become ego-centered, the whole thing is down again in the garbage. So the Vajrayana is how this magic becomes a support for us to get quicker on the path of enlightenment. So there's no more road in the sense that the road is narrow or wide. In this case, the road is already the fruit. The base, the fruit, and the path are all the same. It's like the Vajrayana, of course, you have lots of different things. I'm not going to go through all of this, but the whole thing brings you to the Dzogchen at the end, isn't it? Ati Yoga or Mahamudra. And that is the path, is the fruit, and the fruit is the fruit, and the base is the fruit. So the whole thing is already there since the beginning. And so when I see Anneke, I see somebody who is able to drag people with the hook of her horrible story that people are eager to hear about, because somehow it is attractive, and she is attractive. And she ends up talking to them about the unconditional model, which basically is unconditional love. And that is because at one point in her experience of being abused and tortured and almost killed by grown-up people, she was a child, she had a death experience where she did see her master, and her master is Yogananda. And she has an exchange with her master, and she understands that all that happened to her because she had to be able to understand how these people became that bad. What is it, the darkest dark? We have this in Vajrayana because we have all these entities that are very, they make you afraid. They are terrorific, all these entities. Some of the Dakinis sometimes are even like opening their own body and showing their material, like the intestines, and eating them, things like that. All these horrific things that in the Vajrayana we can visualize, or we can open up all of our body to give it, to feed the demons, which we do with the chiropatics, the practice of cutting through the roots of ego, attachment, and grasping by the means of offering our energies as food. And then you understand, of course, that energy never ends, so there's no fear to have about that. Energy is never ending. So we have this in Vajrayana, but in Vajrayana we are magical beings, and it's not possible to mix that thing with judges and lawyers and stupid psychologists that have no experience at all of the depth of what it is, except for Jung, and some people, of course, that do, but most of them don't. So I was very touched by Anneke Lucas because I felt an intuition about her, and then I understood that this intuition about her is that she was on the same energy field as I was, but she was able to talk to people and I wasn't. Because when I talk to people about Yeshe Tsogyal or about my experience, they get kind of, how could I say, they usually don't rely to it because they get shocked by the way I think, and they also get shocked by the way I react to my own history, and they don't like the history of Yeshe Tsogyal. Why would she not be worldly famous? She is not. Yeshe Tsogyal should be extremely famous because she is the only woman from the beginning that a whole country like Tibet considers a Buddha. She is considered as a Buddha. Yet most people have no idea who she is. So this is not about feminism. This is about that she is so much impossible to grasp and understand that people cannot rely with that nowadays because people are so basically entangled with consumism and 8 worldly dharmas. They don't get anything that is not a worldly dharma. And Anneke talks about all these things, and then I start to feel that she has a relationship with this, and then I dig. So I listen to, I don't know, hours and hours and hours of different conferences from her, and also I wrote a letter to her, 2 letters actually, and then I had an answer from her assistant. I hope one day I'm able to talk with her directly, maybe. And I read her book, and I could listen to her in several languages because I can understand several languages. And then I slowly get all the pieces of this puzzle, and that she also had the insect experience just like Yeshe Tsogyal, and she reacts just like Yeshe Tsogyal, exactly the same thing. And then she has all these experiences of abuse, which Yeshe Tsogyal had, because Yeshe Tsogyal, from her very young age, was abused in the story because she was so beautiful, and all these men wanted to marry her, and she wouldn't marry them because she just, what she wanted was to be free and to practice the Dharma. And at one point I feel that Anneke is telling people, this is me interpretation, that since the dark beings that are like under the power of evil, because that's what they have chosen out of ignorance, that they have chosen powers that could give them fame or money or comfort, or maybe most of all free them from fear, which it doesn't anyway, but you know, you just get tricked. Everybody got tricked from the first one to the second to the, and it's centuries of this going on, of people abusing others like a lineage. But I think that what she's pointing out very skillfully is that if they are doing this with such a powerful endeavor and belief and, how could I say that, resistance, because they are doing these very, 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 very horrible things. We need to be as strong as they are, and that is not going to happen thanks to judges, politicians, and lawyers, and psychologue people. It's not going to happen being militant in the society. Of course, it's okay if people are militant in society. Why not? But as a Vajrayana practitioner, your job is to do magic and to see the world as a magic field. So I am coming to bring this testimony of mine that I cannot feel happy seeing people of the Sangha hurting each other and talking bad about each other and going after masters because they supposedly did this and that. Because these masters, if they did this and that, let the magic operate. If you are a real devoted, magic operates. You know it because it happens to us all the time. The best karma we have, the more we see the fruit of our actions quickly. And we can be of influence for women to have, how would I call that? Intelligence, to have, like for example, distance, in the sense of taking your time to understand what is it that is happening to you and understand your own energies before you get involved. Before you get involved with man or woman. And to be truthful, because, excuse me, I know this is not politically correct, but I have seen lots of women doing it as much as they can and then complaining about it afterwards because they did not get what they wanted, which was the man fully only with them, that guy. I saw it not only around Tibetan masters or whatever, gurus, or I've seen it with people like Polanski, because I was a model. I saw Polanski lots of times, and I have seen all these girls. I never even talked to him because I didn't like him as a person. I didn't feel okay with him as an energy, but I was not hating him. I was just not relating to him. And he was just 2 meters far from me. He never said anything to me. I never said anything to him. You know, I was abused as a young child. My mother is from a family of lots of problems. No black magic, but lots of bad emotions, you know, emotions like despair, hysteric kind of emotions, and alcohol, lots of alcohol. And I was at 14 years old in love with a man that was 22, I think. And he was an abused child himself, and he was half Maori from the islands and half French. Actually, his father was a pilot of an airplane, and his mother was a very beautiful Maori lady from Tahiti. And he left home very early. He was on the ships, you know, this ship's traffic of merchant, commercial ships as a young boy. And he lived a very rough life with lots of drugs and alcohol and all that. And then I was in love with him, and he kind of tricked me with poetry, with music, all of that. And he was very charismatic, extremely charismatic. And actually he had a name that has pointed out the charismatic. He was Tomana was his name. And that comes from the Maori language, which has to do with being charismatic and powerful. And so I lived with him for a few years, from my 14 years old to my 17 years old, 3 years. And I was in the streets, and he mistreated me. And he was getting worse and worse and worse and worse. In the beginning it was wonderful, and then it was worse, worse, worse. Until at one point he actually really wanted even to make me do it with other men, but then he wouldn't like that, so he would beat the other man and then beat me. And then the man would not understand, and all of that thing. And I don't want to go through all the details of that, but I want to tell you one thing that is important, is that I never forgot all of this, and I did somehow felt protected. Maybe I did what the people call dissociation, but I don't believe that a Vajrayana practitioner should believe in dissociation, because at one point, when you really practice, really, really practice, it is about learning how to dissociate and associate at will. So you don't have to be victim of yourself. You have to learn how to deal with yourself and your energies. This is what life on earth is about for human beings, because we are the only being that has this kind of imagination, that we can do that, and then we can be very helpful instead of being destructful, of course, that's obvious. We have the ability to be very, very helpful. And so when I went in retreat at one point, I was 20 years old, and I was in a full retreat for 1 year. I did all the Gyönjo, and at one point I was walking in the forest. I was alone in the forest. They would bring my food at a tree once a day at a specific place. I would go and get the food. And then I never saw anybody. And at one point I took a stone on the road, and the stone was very soft, and I was touching the stone, and I felt this instinct, you know, of the stone belongs to me. It's very subtle, no? It's the fact that I touch it, immediately I want to own it. And it's like something that comes as an impulse. And I felt that that was very interesting, because actually how would I own it? So my whole process as I walk with that stone in my hand is, how could I own a stone? It's so soft and so nice. And then I thought, well, if I swallow it, it's not going to work. If I smash it, destroy it, it's not going to work. But of course, if I don't understand and I get frustrated about owning this stone, the most obvious thing I may do, if I am a nervous person and an unhappy person and a brutal person, is destroy the stone. Because I cannot own a person, so I destroy that person. And also because I have all this bad energy inside of me, I have to put it somewhere. So I understood that immediately, and I felt in peace. And then slowly, slowly, my whole life, I have been healing my energies from not only this history, but my whole family. And now when I read Anneke's book, I was in a state that I completely forgot about all this. I never think about all of this stuff of my past. It looks like if it was another century, and it looks like it was another life, like a previous life of mine. And that was interesting because at one point I'm reading that she forgot all of it, and then the other victims that talk out, they forget it. And they just remember it later because of some detail that brings them back to memory, and maybe that memory brings them back to be in the mind control, that they were programmed to kill themselves, things like that. And I actually, as I read the book, was thinking, oh, that I'm so lucky this never happened to me. And then slowly I started to feel in my body a few reactions to what she was saying, and I understood that actually I still had in my body a few things there that are called memories. And then I suddenly remembered all of that. Of course I lived all of this too. This happened to me too. It's not as bad as hers, of course, but it happened to me. It happened very bad. I could have been killed also. And what opened my eyes is that she has scars, Anneke Lucas, and she puts pictures of her scars, and the scars look really, really very, very like erased, no? And I thought, how can a scar be erased that much? And then I thought, but you have a scar, because this guy attacked me with a blade. He wanted to kill me. And I had a scar on my hand, and it would not close because I never went to the doctor at that time. So I didn't do the things you have to do when you have a scar. And so I had it infected, and so I had to put my hand in a liquid that we call Saintol in French. And actually my scar closed. But actually it was a huge scar. It was very, very obvious before. And now you cannot even see it anymore. I know it's there, but nobody would see it. So I thought, well, yeah, that's it. She is also like me. And then I remember that I also had all this quest for love, because actually my whole story of being abused was because I wanted to be loved. I didn't understand that love was within me. And as she says, and then I think Anneke Lucas is telling this message that Yeshe Tsogyal is telling, and that I also rely with and love. I love the love. And she called her book A Quest for Love, because that's what drags us into the depth of relationship, and it can drag us into the depth of black magic too. It's just that it's not because we become forever hateful and forever revengeful that we're not going to become like them. And also the Sangha is important, because we women, as we are part of the Sangha, we are responsible for the Sangha not being broken, not being divided. And so if we want the Sangha to be a support for people who need support when they practice the Dharma, because the Dharma is very deep and very difficult, it is not because we are going to argue that it's going to get any better. It's going to get much worse. So this is why I always will go on, even if people don't like it, saying these things. And I think Anneke Lucas is more skillful than I am about doing that. Thank you very much. This was what I wanted to tell you.